it's a challenge to get people motivated, to get people to want to do something. It'll be a big issue. Because just telling people you want them to do something isn't enough. Just saying, oh, go and do this. Go out there and vote. Go out there and buy my product. Go out there and do whatever isn't enough. In fact, if you tell people what to do, they tend to push back. They have one of two reactions. Either they think that they don't want to do it, or they think that they're already doing it and they really don't care. It's not important to them. Especially happens if you're trying to educate somebody. They either think, well, I don't want to learn that, or I already know everything. You can't explain anything to me. Forget about it. I already know. I already know what's going on. And you can find yourself with an audience that thinks, well, the whole time you're talking, you don't have any value. Nothing you say has any value to me. Oh yeah, the people who are just starting out, sure, they can get what you're talking about. But for me, I'm above that. Your stuff just isn't valuable. Your stuff just doesn't matter. And if you got the whole audience thinking that, you've got a problem. And you'll know it when you look out and you see people looking back at you, that look of, I don't know who you're talking to, buddy. It ain't to me, though. So you have to get past that. Somehow you have to connect with your audience in a way that they start thinking, yeah, maybe that's something I ought to do. Never thought about it that way before. Perhaps I could try that. That's the goal. And yet too often speakers make really basic mistakes and problems happen. Their audience doesn't go where they expect or where they want it to go. And things just kind of go downhill from there. You don't want that to happen. And often when you realize that things are starting to go downhill, and you're really demotivating your audience, it's too late. The audience is already there. And no matter what you say, they're not going to pay attention. You don't want that to happen. So today we're going to talk about 3 things you want to keep in mind trying to motivate your audience, or trying to get them going and get them doing things. Some people have one thing they talk about, some have 2, very few of all 3. Without all 3, your audience will just sit there and look at you as if to say, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to buy whatever you're selling. I don't think we're going to go wherever you're leading. You don't want to be in that situation. So you have to make sure you get the audience to open up. You get the audience to think about things in a different way. And with these 3 things that you focus on, you can get your audience to open up. You can get your audience to think about things in that different way. You can make it work so that your audience is better off, and you as a speaker do your job in making sure your audience understands they're better off. We're going to learn about all that today. Talk about how to get your audience up, get them going. And the first thing you need to think about is, what exactly do you want people to do? Go out and vote, go read a book, go have a good time, make the most of your life. This is all too vague. It really doesn't mean much. If you aren't specific in what you want people to do, then they aren't going to do it. You have to be very clear about exactly what you want. Go vote for this person. Go read this book. Study this chapter. Learn this lesson. You want to make sure that the actions you're suggesting, what you want people to do, is very specific, very to the point. So if you want people to do something, they got to know what they're supposed to do. People will follow directions and can follow directions, but only if they know which way they're supposed to go. Go outside the door and turn left. People can follow that. Go outside the door and turn wherever your heart says to turn. People can't follow that. So you have to be clear. And a challenge a lot of speakers have is that they want to be open to possibilities. They want to say all the things about casting your wheat upon the seas. Be open to opportunities. Be open to all different sorts of things coming along. And that's okay. But you want to be definite in what they're supposed to be open to. And that's one of the most important things. Making sure that people understand what the action is. What it is you want them to do. Because without direction, people will tend to wander off. Tend to go in whatever direction they want. And as a speaker, you want to direct the audience. Possibly, you're trying to sell something. In which case, you don't want your message to be just buy, but instead buy this. If people don't know what it is you're trying to sell, they're much less likely to buy it. So the actions have to be clear. It has to be clear what you're looking for the audience to do. The audience has to understand it. Because even if you think it's clear, even if you think it's perfectly, absolutely clear, if the audience doesn't get it, there's a problem. So sit down with somebody and explain to them what it is you want them to do, what it is you want them to buy. And then afterwards ask them, do you understand? And if the reaction is probably you aren't being clear, then go back to them and ask them, what was unclear? What didn't you get? What couldn't you understand? Why couldn't you understand it? And go on in this way until you understand better why you aren't being understandable. Before you're going to motivate anybody to do anything, they've got to know what the heck you're talking about. And if your friends and associates have no clue what you're saying, you're not going to have a chance of reaching the audience. So if you want to motivate people, you want to get them up and get going, the first thing you got to do is making it really clear about what they're supposed to do. Making it clear, not only clear to you, but most importantly, clear to them. Now once you've taken that step and they understand what they're supposed to do, there are a couple other things you've also got to keep in mind. Another thing to think about is how you're going to sell them on your idea. It's not enough to just put ideas in front of people. You also have to sell them on it. If you have an idea in front of people and you haven't really thought about why they should do it, then there's a problem. There's an issue. Because just laying out, hey, here's what you're supposed to do, doesn't mean people want to do it. This is a problem a lot of speakers have. One thing I've heard quite a bit about, different speakers, different times, they talk about how it's so important to be out of the box. We need to be out of the box. It's so important to be out of the box. Whatever you do, think out of the box. Out of the box thinking. And the speakers go on and on about in the box, out of the box, in the box, out of the box, and out of the box is always better. The only problem is, there are some people in that speaker's audience, maybe many of them, thinking, I like it in the box. I've been in the box for a very long time. I like the box. I don't see any reason to get out of this box. I'm very happy in my box, and I'm just staying here. So you're going to get some people who think they're just perfectly happy where they are. And if there's no reason for them to make any change, they're not going to make it. No matter how many boxes speakers create, no matter how much they go on and on about out of the box and out of the box and create stories and scenarios, they can't actually sell that person on the importance of getting out of that box. That person's going to stay in that box. And not only are they going to stay in the box, but because the speaker brought up the idea they should get out of the box, they're even more determined to stay in the box. They're more determined to stay right there. That's where they are. In the box and happy in the box. So I don't see any reason to change. There has to be a reason you give for people to change, or they aren't going to change. And unfortunately, this happens all the time with even very experienced speakers. They go on and describing, here are the actions you need to do. They make it really clear. They describe all the different actions. They create stories around them. They don't clearly lay out, hey, here are the benefits of doing what I'm talking about. Here's what you will gain. Here's what you'll learn. Here's what you'll discover. You have to sell people on things. You have to sell them and get them involved and get them interested and get them thinking about things. Make them aware. Because if people aren't thinking about things, aren't thinking in a different way, then there's a problem. In a speaker, you're going to see a lot of people who just aren't budging. They aren't moving. No matter what you say, it seems nobody even cares. And that's because you didn't sell them. You didn't get to them. You didn't really make that point that, hey, this is what you need to change, and this is why you need to do it. Now, no question, you've got to lay out what people need to do, and no question that you have to make sure that people are sold on that idea. But although these things are very important, very, very important, there's still one more thing you need. One more thing you got to think about when you're trying to motivate people getting up and getting going. And if you don't have that one extra thing, well, it's not going to happen. That last thing you really have to have if you're going to motivate people, that point that's so important, that so many speakers forget. They're trying to get their audience up and moving. That last point is to make sure that whatever it is you're trying to get people to do can be easily done. If it's too complex, if it takes a lot of work, if it's a big deal to get it done, people aren't going to do it. They're not going to do it. So if you have some motivational speech that begins with something like the middle of it, you jump off the cliff with the parachute, make sure you got your harness going in the leftward counterclockwise direction. At the same time, pull up on the top of the harness and steer away gently, making sure not to touch the emergency parachute because that would eject your emergency parachute and you don't want to do that. At the same time, watching the downdraft. Be very careful. The updraft will be coming after people have left the hall. They're gone. They're saying, there is no way I'm doing that stuff. It's way too complicated and I'm not interested. Just forget it. If it isn't easy, or you don't make it seem easy, people aren't going to do it. If you want to get people to interact, you want to get people to participate and write things down, and you've got some points you want to cover, say, write this down. Very simple. Write this one thing down. Don't every other sentence say, write this down, write this down, write this down, write this down. They aren't going to do it. You're getting too complicated and too annoying. Make sure it's simple. Make sure it's easy to do. Very important. And if you're trying to get people to do an exercise, and you want to get them to participate, say you want them to think about what's a crazy idea they've always wanted to do. Don't say, okay, write down 30 things you've always wanted to do in decreasing order, starting with the ones you like most, and then finishing the ones you want to do least. They aren't going to do it. Not a chance. They're going to write down 2, and maybe 3, and after that the pencils go down, the pens go down, the glares come up, and they're saying, you write the rest. It's got to be easy. It's got to be something simple. Something they can do. If you want people to write down their dreams, say, write down 3 things. 3. You've always wanted to do, but never thought you could. That they can do. 3 things, no problem. Some may strain to find the 3rd one, but they'll find it. Write down 300 things, not going to happen. And so many speakers get into that situation. There's the audience all ready, all interested, and they make it so complex. After they go on step after step after step after step, and finally the audience says, forget it. We don't want to do this. Nobody would want to do this. Just you and your speaking and your speech, go back wherever you came from. Wasting our time like that. You don't want that to happen during your speech. You want the whole audience to think that you're wasting their time. You want to make sure the audience gets something out of the speech. And they will if you keep it simple. So the final point, and in some way the most important point, is when you're trying to motivate your audience and get them to do things, keep it simple. How to really excite them, get their blood boiling, get them thinking in a whole different way. And it begins with making sure that they know exactly what they're supposed to do. If you aren't clear on exactly what they're supposed to do, then people aren't going to do it. As we talked about, if you want someone to be out of the box and do out-of-the-box thinking, you have to be really clear about what that is. Having a bunch of stories and things like that is great, but make sure it's really clear that this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do to make that out-of-the-box thinking happen. Without that, without some clear, definite sense of exactly what they're supposed to do, People get confused and very quickly lose interest. If you're going to motivate people to get up and get going, you have to make it clear where they're going to go. If they don't know where they're going to go, they're going to quickly lose interest in you and what you have to say. Even if you get everybody so they understand what the heck it is they're supposed to do, if they don't have a reason to go there, not going to do it. So often speakers get up and they talk about, hey, let's do wonderful things and get going, and people say, no, not me. And the more the speaker pushes, the more the person resists, because they don't see any reason for it. They see no reason for it. So they just want to sit there and sit down and stay there. They don't want to get up and get going, just they want to sit there and stay there. That's their motto. So there has to be a reason for them to go, to move. There has to be a benefit. The benefit has to be clear. Just as the steps they need to do has to be clear, so the benefit has to be clear. The benefit has to be something that anybody would say, wow, that's something I want. I'm definitely going to start working on this. So you have to sell it to them. It's not enough just to mention it. It's not enough just to say, here are the steps you have to do. You have to sell it to them. It means knowing your audience, understanding your audience, understanding what their interests are, and what will get them excited and get them moving. And even if you've done all that, if it isn't an easy, simple thing to do, people won't do it. You make it very clear, but there are a whole bunch of steps, 10, 15, 20 steps. It takes years, or 10 years, or 20 years, and you got better by little tiny bits. People aren't going to do it. They want to get better, but they want to get better now, not 20 years from now. Right now. We live in an instant society that wants instant results. And unreal as that might be, you at least have to make sure it's something they can instantly do. And if you do this, it's very simple. You just do it over and over again, and you'll get long-term results. That people can do. But do this, it's very complicated. You get hopelessly confused, and you may get some results that people won't do. Make sure it's something they can do, something easy, something simple, something they can understand, and something they can just lay out. 3 steps to a better life is much better than 3,000 steps to a better life. Simple is better. Direct, easy, and easy to understand. It's great to motivate people. It's great to see people get up and get going, and to make that happen, you want to keep in mind the things we talked about today. Because those things need to be there. And they need to happen. So if you want to motivate people and get them up and get going, remember the 3 things we talked about today, and you'll have your audience on your feet and moving into the future.